full of outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Good morning, EduFolk, and welcome to the weekly review on Teachers Talk Radio. I hope you're all well. We've all had a little bit of a break, so should be feeling revived and rejuvenated. And today I am joined by Christopher, Brent and John, so good morning to the three of you. Packed agenda as always, lots to get through, so I hope you are ready and raring to go. We've got recruitment on the agenda today. We have got Julia Waters at the NEU conference, and we're also going to be talking about possible further strike action in the mix as well. So without further ado, let's crack on. And I'm going to be opening today with recruitment. And as you can see on the banner below, the DfE is going to be stopping, or has stopped, international relocation payments for physics and MFL teachers. So that's the first part of this. There's so much going on here. Also, schools in England are increasingly recruiting teachers from overseas, including Jamaica, to fill vacancies, which is leading to concerns about teacher shortages in Jamaica itself. There is a significant rise in skilled worker visas issued to teachers from abroad, and that has doubled from 2022 to 2023. Jamaican teachers are attracted to work in the UK due to better salaries and working conditions, and that then exacerbates or creates a bit of a brain drain in their home country. Recruitment efforts have included advertising seminars, let's try that again, and direct approaches to teachers in Jamaica offering higher pay. And the government aims to address these shortages. Concerns are raised about the long-term sustainability of this approach. Can we keep going with this? So, Christopher, I'm going to come to you first on this. What are your thoughts? I've thrown a lot of information in the mix there. Is there anything in particular that sticks out to you?
Yeah, I was particularly struck by the Jamaican story angle, actually, and having had friends and colleagues in the past struggle to get their Australian and New Zealand teacher credentials recognised by the DfE. I'm amazed that English schools have been allowed to hoover up professionals from the Caribbean relatively easily. I think of the hurdles that some of my younger colleagues had to go through. Essentially, some of them had to do a new PGCE for the sake of getting a job in a school. So I'm slightly surprised by that. I understand that some of the London Academy chains are even sending recruitment teams to the Caribbean to scout for qualified teachers. But my main worry about this is how likely is this policy to damage the educational systems of the countries that are exporting their teachers? I mean, if Jamaica has supplied 486 qualified teachers already, it's worth remembering that in 2021, there were only about 25,000 teachers in Jamaica to begin with, and the country only has about 10 teacher training institutions, from what I'm aware. I'm also worried that the international teachers that make the switch to England will find probably little incentive to stay if the pressures on residency status continue. So, we should be investing properly in homegrown talent and making the profession more appealing to British citizens, and I'd like to see us doing a bit more in that direction.
And John, as someone who's now sort of on the outside of it a little bit, looking in now, have you noticed sort of the changes that have gone on in recruitment over the years? Has there been a significant shift in how this is done, and the sort of focus on, or less of a focus on, homegrown talents and now having to look further afield?
Well, thank you for that question, Lucy. I think that, because looking back on my career, which goes back to the 1980s and so on, when I first went into teaching, I remember going for my first job, and there was a big recruitment day, and there was something like 5 or 6 jobs on offer at this particular school, and 20 or 30 teachers. And it was a big jamboree kind of, we were treated to a day around the school. We were shown this to part of the school, shown that part of the school. And I remember getting the job at the end of the day. We whittled down from this big group to a smaller group. And when I left teaching, it was lucky to get 1 or 2 applicants for jobs. And so there'd been a dramatic change in the environment of finding teachers over my career. But something Chris said, that simple thought that, make teaching more attractive to teachers and recruit more teachers. That has been said for decades now. So very early on in my career, people said, teaching isn't attractive enough. Teaching isn't paid well enough. Teaching is too stressful. And this country found one of its solutions to that as being a morally dubious recruitment in a country where they can actually identify a place where people might find it attractive to teach in Britain. The reason it's possible we found in Jamaica teachers who might like to teach in Britain where the comparison is favorable. It's wrong in so many ways. It's short-termist and it's not the answer. That's my answer.
Thank you for that. And Brent, a quick comment from you on this.
Well, it's ironic, I'm already teaching in another country, and Lucy, you're in the same situation. So it's normal in teaching to help people move between places and countries, and that helps to the cultural diversity of a country. But that is unsustainable at the moment, and it's part of the professional brain drain that's happening across many sectors, including the NHS, and teaching is now falling foul of that. It's quite ironic that a government who prided itself on leaving the European Union to cut down on migration has watched 500,000 of our brightest and best leave, because that's the other side of migration, is that you need people to replace the people you're losing. And all the rhetoric coming out of government seems to be about stopping migration. Well, it actually helped increase migration because they're driving people out of a country. Because migration is driven by 2 things. It's driven by push and pull. People are pulled into this country from other countries, and people are pushed out of this country. And what's pushing our professionals out of this country is everything wrong in education. From our shoddy buildings to our over-hothoused Ofsted, to our exam system, to the lack of pay and conditions, and even just a general disrespect from your employer. And what you have there then is a situation where we are losing children who've gone through our education system, who are in our education system, who have a head start in an education system, are being forced to leave because they're in so much student debt. That's another reason why our youngest, brightest and bests are often Western Australian and UAE and all those countries. And in many ways, I don't blame them, because I'm part of a brain drain myself that was pushed out of my own country for those very reasons in certain aspects. So it takes a systemic root and branch to stem the flow of people leaving the profession in this country. And simply the solution to pull people in from other countries is almost post-colonial, disrespectful, and not sustainable. And it's just symptomatic of everything that's going wrong.
Thank you for that, Brent. Okay, and I'm sure we will. This is an ongoing story, and I'd say this about a lot of our stories, but they seem to be just gaining momentum all of the time. So I am sure we will come back to this and hear more about this at a future date. But we are going to move on now to talk about Julia Waters addressing the NEU conference. Right, I'd like to begin this story by sharing a clip with you of Julia Waters, Ruth Perry's sister, addressing the NEU conference earlier in the week.
I know the NEU has called again for Ofsted to be abolished, and you might expect my family and me to be calling for the same thing. But frankly, what would be the point? Being angry and objecting to Ofsted's existence is totally understandable. But teaching unions have been calling for the abolition of Ofsted for 30 years. And what good has that done teachers? Look at the evidence. What did calling for Ofsted to be abolished do to help Ruth? No one is going to abolish Ofsted anytime soon, whether the Education Secretary is part of a Conservative or a Labour government. No one should be arguing, or seem to be arguing, that schools should not be accountable to their communities. So I urge you, please, stop campaigning to abolish Ofsted, even if this remains your long-term ambition. Instead, put your considerable energy into this unprecedented opportunity for real change now, and work together with others to make the system we've got better and kinder.
Well, quite the heartfelt appeal there from Julia Waters, who is Ruth Perry's sister. Very interesting as well, because I know we all have our feelings, and we've discussed this openly in the past, whether we think Ofsted should be abolished, whether we think there needs to be change, whether we think there needs to be an entirely new organisation. And I think it's really interesting coming from Julia Waters that she's not calling for Ofsted to be abolished. In fact, she's calling for kindness. She's calling for real change to occur within the system, which I think is where many of us do sit. But Brent, I want to come to you first on this one, and I want you to share your feelings on what Julia Waters said.
Well, as always, she's an extremely brave lady and speaks from the heart. And I thought that was, we could see what she knew she was going against the grain, but having the courage to do that and say, look, I think you're wrong, unions, for saying that you want the Ofsted abolished. I do want it abolished. As much as I respect Julia and everything she's done, I think it's finished. I think it's finished because the trust is gone. And you can only repair a relationship if the two people in the relationship are willing to change. Ofsted ain't willing to change. I haven't seen any evidence thus far, apart from a consultation, which is given a gimmicky name. I've been in the game 20 years and I've seen Ofsted get progressively worse. The direction of travel with Ofsted heads towards more accountability, more data, more government interference. We need some organisation to support teachers and support us, because Ofsted hasn't supported us. And that's where it should come from. Not an organisation, as Amanda Spielman was saying, she was just doing her job, that Ofsted should be rigorous and almost cruel. So for me, it's about culture change. If Ofsted is to be redeemed, it has to completely change its culture. And I don't know if it's got it within its capacity to do that, because all I see at the moment is reshuffling some of the deck chairs in the Titanic rather than systemic change. So for me, I disagree with Julia. I understand what she's trying to do, but the motions that are always put towards conferences in AEU come from the ground up. They come from the ordinary teachers. They don't come from the union leadership. So the motion that was passed, another motion that was passed in conference, saying abolished Ofsted, came from the delegates, and the delegates are the teachers in the classroom who have just reached that point where the toxicity of Ofsted have driven them to that conclusion that we need to abolish it. But I take what she's saying, that maybe it's better to reform it within than howl from the outside and sort of like criticize it, reform it rather than criticize it. I get that point, but I think we've gone too far.
Thank you. And Christopher, do you think we're at the point where change is possible with Ofsted, or are you in line with Brent and think that we are at the end of the road here?
I don't think I'm at the stage where I want to see Ofsted abolished, and I do think the union vote again gives us a clear sense of the historical trend that the NEU has taken on Ofsted matters over the years. I think Professor Waters makes a reasonable and well-reasoned contribution to the debate actually around the future of inspection. We do need an inspection body for schools in England. It does need to be supportive of the professionals who are involved in delivering education, but it does also need to be staffed by people who have a genuine perspective on the difference between good practice and bad practice, so that the general profession can get behind it. I mean, where in the world are state education departments currently getting schools inspection right? What fact-finding missions have the DFE and the Education Select Committee been involved with of late? I've heard nothing about this over the last 5 or 6 years. I'd be keen to hear something from those experts. And I sometimes wonder whether there might be scope for establishing a lottery system whereby a certain percentage of staff from each school institution can be summoned to serve on inspection teams, rather like the jury system that we have in the country, where they have particular expertise. I think that would be a really, really quite useful way of re-establishing trust between the inspection body and the profession. Would there be any harm in changing the name of the inspection body? Probably not. Might be a good idea, but we do need something that involves people who are involved in the game, I think, and that's where I'd like to see us go in the future.
Incredibly interesting, interesting from you, Christopher. And yeah, so almost like teacher jury duty. I wonder if anyone watching or listening in today has any thoughts on this. I think that could be potentially really interesting. I can see Brent nodding away there. John, coming to you. Of course, I'm not against accountability in this profession. I don't think anybody in their right mind. I think we are accountable whether we like it or not. But where is the line with this accountability? Where do you feel that these changes need to happen? Where do you feel that Ofsted's almost gone too far, and where do you feel that maybe the aspects of it are still quite useful? What can we keep and what can we get rid of?
Well, it's an interesting question, because I was a little surprised by Julia's speech. Yeah, again, she was listened to with great respect, and it was a brave speech to make and so on, but I found it confusing because in a sense it was a bit of semantics. If everything that's wrong with Ofsted is everything, the problem with Ofsted is everything about it, then to what extent do you change it to such a degree that you have abolished it? I mean, its culture, its remit, its approach, its what it seeks to find out is wrong. Everything is wrong about it, apart from the underlying thought. And anyone who's a teacher and who's turned to anyone who's not a teacher and said, complained about Ofsted and got the response something along the lines of, well, in Universal Sprockets, we had inspections all the time, quality control and so on. And when I was in the army, we had people turn up at a moment's notice and have a look at your socks and how you'd made your bed. And all this is quite normal. And he said, well, yes, but teaching isn't like that. And you require an inspection process that is both accountable and supportive and able to address the world of schools in their own particular location in a constructive and helpful manner. And that can take place. I mean, Chris was wondering, I'm going to say Finland. It's always the place to return to when you want to say a place where they do it properly. Finland is a highly regarded education system where they have nothing like Ofsted at all. They have consortiums of schools that inspect each other in a mutually supportive and cooperative manner. Well, as far as I understand it, I've never been to Finland. If anyone knows more than I do about that, then you can let me know. But it does appear to be a different way of doing it. So yes, if you want to say don't abolish Ofsted, but just get rid of it in every possible respect that it now exists, well, okay. But it should change dramatically and be replaced by something much better. It's wrong. It's too far to leave it the way it is. It's lost the trust. Even the name Ofsted has lost the trust of teachers.
I once heard Ofsted turned into quite the acronym, which is actually not repeatable on a weekend panel show. So I'll save that one for another time. But as always, this is ongoing. We're going to keep hearing about this. We're going to be keeping you up to date with it on Teachers Talk Radio and on the weekly review as well, because I'm sure there'll be more developments, as there invariably are. So kind of in keeping a little bit with this, but also moving on, we are now going to be talking about possible further strike action in the year. So the NEU, the National Education Union, is considering further industrial action this year. Potential strikes are penciled in for September over pay and funding in schools. No surprise there. The NEU's General Secretary has emphasised the importance of conducting a formal ballot over a significant period of time, regardless of whether it's explicitly called for in the emergency motion. The executive of the NEU can call for a ballot without needing specific motion from the conference. There are internal divisions over the timing of potential ballot and subsequent actions, with some advocating for action to coincide with the government's decision on pay for 2024-2025. So, John, coming to you on this first. Any surprise that further strike action is being penciled into the calendar?
No, not at all. Based on what we've been discussing about recruitment crisis of teaching, discontent with Ofsted, and so on. Not a surprise that strike action is once again in being talked about, and that teachers are angry, teachers are disappointed, so on. I'm not surprised that. I will defer to Chris and Brent on this in terms of the mood of teachers right now, because I'm outside of the profession, but I know that teachers never wanted to go on strike. it was always something that was kind of a thing that was resisted. They knew the problems. They saw that what it effect it had on parents, and they knew that it was always more than just money. It was about conditions. It was about the stresses of working in schools. It was about the bureaucracy, the paperwork, the behaviour, and so on, and the investment in teachers. I think there are a number of sort of pressures coming along, and it's hard to say which will succeed. Teachers don't want to go on strike particularly. On the other hand, there's a government that almost seems to be provoking them. The letter that Gillian Keegan sent the independent pay review body, which is not at all an independent body, but sent the independent pay review body, pretty much instructs them. Last year we gave the to paraphrase, last year we gave the teachers a lot. This year you don't need to give them so much. Well, that's that. It may be. On the other hand, the government won't want to have strikes going on as an election approaches. But on the other hand, it's very much leave a mess for the next government is also in their view. So I think almost, what it's a bit like Thunderbirds. Anything could happen in the next half hour. I think that was Thunderbirds anyway. Anything could happen in the next year. I'm not sure whether there'll be strikes or not. The mood, I think, could go either way.
Brent, coming to you, can you shed any light on this at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one because I felt that we should have continued when we had momentum last year, when we had all the unions out. And I felt it was a mistake, and I'll still stand behind that, although only 12% of people agreed with me in the union because there was some strike fatigue then. But I often felt there was momentum then, and there was a routine then, and the argument was there. Now, the government ended up giving a 6.5% pay rise. Effectively, it was a pay cut when you consider inflation was running at 10%. This is on the back of data this week that shows in the public sector that I used to be social workers that are the worst off in pay terms. In the last 14 years, teachers have lost more pay than any other profession. So that's a fact now. We are, and especially if you're a veteran long-term teacher like myself, our pay is stagnant, our pay has declined. People talk about our pensions, that's declining too, because you've got to stay in the profession long enough to get the pension, and people aren't staying in the profession long enough. So gone are the days of the cushy little number and the public sector that was, we are practically private sector now. And for me, I never want to go on strike, but at the same time, it is the last resort. And if you've been pushed that far that you feel that you have to withdraw your labour in a vocational industry, which is teaching is, then that shows you how far we've come. And in my generation of teachers, nearly 20 years in it, it was very rare for us to strike. I think we only striked twice before in the 20 years up until now. But we've reached that point. However, there is fatigue within the profession. This was harder this time to motivate people towards an action because, as we're saying, there's a general melee of, do we have to? There's a general sort of depression. I don't know what to call it, just one thing after another. We've had cuts, we've had COVID, we've had pay cuts. You just take everything going on in education. Anybody that's still in education at the moment, I'd say we're like 1930s Great Depression sort of psychology at the moment. We're just in survival mode. And going in strike, just we have to. Surely somebody else is going to help us out here because we're doing the heavy lifting. And I know some members of the NEU are getting to that point where, again, it has to be the members of the NEU. Where are the rest? Where's the cavalry? Where's the Labour Party? Where's the parents? Where is everybody else? And that's where I think some people are a little bit sort of, why us again? Why us again? So that's where I'm at the moment. I'll have to do it. I will do it. But like many members, I don't think it's fair at the moment that some people are fighting for the profession and others are just not. So that's how I feel. But deflated by it. All. Sorry.
No, I think, it's, I know we kind of have to, with stories like this, we kind of have to bring things down before we bring them back up again. Christopher, do you sort of share the sentiment that people are just a bit done in generally? I know we talked about this before we came on air and said that I think people are just worn out generally, but teachers especially. I mean, it's one thing after another. Do we even have it in us to carry on full stop at the moment?
Difficult, isn't it? I hear a lot of what Brent's saying, and I mean, he summed up some of my feelings there in his discussion about what the wider membership of the union might be thinking at the moment. Personal view, I don't think teaching unions should be calling for strike action in a general election year. I think there's a time and a place, and I'd be possibly delaying that. That would be out of step with the rest of the union, I would suspect. We have heard the NASUWT describe the motion itself as gesture politics. I think it is more than that. I mean, there are system-wide issues that need fixing in education. There's been no shortage of those discussed over the last 12 months on this station and elsewhere. But I think it's also a warning to Keir Starmer and co about what the left are expecting from a Labour government should they come in. So that there is part of that I'm aware of too. We always need to be looking to improve conditions in the profession, but I don't think now is the right time. And I don't think I would be alone in saying this, even within the NEU.
But sort of, and just to kind of devil's advocate a little bit, if not now, where we really are in crisis point, then when? And I don't know if any of you want to leap in on that.
Well, the crisis isn't going away anytime soon, I'd suggest. So, there will be another suitable time to put that to the membership.
Maybe
Chris
so.
is absolutely, I think Chris is absolutely spot on. I think there was a definite message shot across the bow at any future potential government. It's a question I asked Daniel Kebede directly. Would he be taking the same course of action if it was a Labour government? And being an apolitical union, his answer was it would be. So I think that if we expect that and change of government is going to change the fortunes of education and teaching in general, I just don't see it. I don't see it in policy. I don't see the same feeling, and John would back me with this. In 97, when Blair came in, education was one of the key planks of the Labour government when it came in. I don't see the same force or the same momentum or the same energy being directed toward education. I don't see it. I don't feel it. I don't see that there is that kind of push. It's more something more the same in a kind of nicer, gentler way of putting it. And I think that's where, again, I have to sort of, what do we do? What do you do when you're desperate? It's your last course of action, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for that, everybody. I mean, again, ongoing discussions. And these discussions are currently made possible by our lovely sponsor, John Catt. They have a wide catalogue of books available. And as you can see, the link is down there, johncattbookshop.com. Do go and check it out. There are so many books on a variety of categories within education. So if you're looking to boost your CPD, if you're looking to find something to read, please do go and check it out. That is johncattbookshop.com. So thank you to them. We've got a little bit of life admin just before we go. There's so much going on at Teachers Talk Radio, as always. But first things first, if you want to find yourself on our panel here, for example, the weekly review, or if you want to host your own show, do what all of us do on a regular basis, then please do get in touch with us. You can get in touch via our Twitter page. Well, it's not Twitter anymore, is it? It's X, or you can contact us directly via our email address, which is info@teacherstalkradio.com, I believe. I'll need to double check that. So that is the first thing. We have also got events coming up and shows coming up. There is a well-being show on Monday. You can see the image there. We have got Steve Waters and Sunetta Bagri talking to Hannah and Tom on Monday at 7:30, which is going to be sponsored by Teach Well Toolkit as well. So that's really good to look forward to as well. And finally, our last little bit of admin is Teachers Talk Primary is coming up. So for those of you who are primary teachers like myself, I'm gutted I can't attend this in person because sadly I am abroad, but it'll be on Saturday, the 29th of June in Manchester. So if you want to know more about that, follow TTR Primary 1. You can see the X handle there. So all of that is there and ready for you when you want to have a look. So thank you very much once again to my panel today. You've been absolutely wonderful, and I'm sure we will do this again, well, next week. I don't know who will be in the chair. It might be me. It might be somebody else. Oh, one more thing I've forgotten. I can see Tom shouting at me in the background. We've got shows before we go. We've got something very crucial with all my information and everything I've had to remember today. We will end on shows of the week. Thank you, Tom. So sorry, everybody. Almost forgot the most important part of the week. So who am I going to come to first? I think, John, I'm going to go for you first.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed the show, and it was from my fellow panelist, Chris Vowles. It's the late show. Which day of the week was it? The late show last week, and it was interviewing Dr. Sheena Law-Levy, and I like this. It was proper Radio 4. This was. It was the kind of you felt informed and entertained, and what was the other thing? Informed, entertained, and so on, and educated. I learned a lot. But it was the premise of the show was education among hunter-gatherer societies. It was absolutely brilliant. The insight I took away from it, from this wonderful piece of research that had been taken place among the Bayaka people of the Congo, was that these people understood something we all need to understand, which is that education happens within childhood. And once you embrace the childhood of the learner, you understand something so simple, so important, and something we've often forgotten. Brilliant.
Fantastic. Christopher, coming to you next.
Great. Thanks for your kind words, John. I'll pass them back to my guest. I'd like to recommend Catherine Taylor's programme on surviving the early careers framework with a young teaching colleague who has been negotiating this scheme of professional learning while managing a secondary subject department, which sounded quite a challenge. I thought the show gave an excellent insight really into the aspirations and needs of the newest entrants into the profession. And I'd suggest it's definitely worth a listen if you're unsure about what the next generation of teachers are looking for from mentoring and from the early careers framework.
Delightful. Brent, coming to you.
Well, how do I follow hunter-gatherers to surviving the profession? It's brilliant. It's like my old university anthropology lessons here. It's great. Which actually Darren Lester, which pretty much sums up a lot of what we've been talking about even just today, about are we a profession? That was Saturday morning show. Really deep, insightful. He was looking at, some of the issues coming out of the NEU conference and asking the question, what are we as a profession? Or are we a profession? How do we act professionally? So this concept of professionality and how it applies to teaching. And again, he's bringing in some of his academic studies from outside university. And it's really good when you get people bringing in that sort of CPD from what they're currently doing and bringing it to the Teachers Talk Radio, and then extending that beyond into the profession itself, maybe using the word profession itself. So it's really insightful and I thought very thought-provoking Saturday morning show by Darren Lester.
Fantastic. And finally, for me, it was Graham's show about escape rooms. Now, I am definitely a fan of using
That's survival too, isn't it?
Kind of, yes. It seems to be a running theme here this week. I don't know if the hosts are trying to tell Teachers Talk Radio something. It's just kind of this vibe of breaking for freedom. But not only did Graham beautifully explain what escape rooms are, because I think some people have been to real life ones, which he talks about, where you go with a group of people and you have to crack codes and all the rest of it and then escape, and it's all beautifully done and themed and all the rest of it. But he also acknowledged the importance of, recreating that in a classroom takes a lot of work. It's quite tricky. You have to think about it, but it can be done. And he so talks about how he's used it really effectively, how learning is still occurring. It's not just, you're not just playing a game, how you can relate it to whatever subject or whatever piece of learning you're trying to do, and that you don't actually have to redecorate your entire classroom. You can do it in a way that is manageable and sustainable for you as a teacher. So really, really useful and really worth listening to. Right. After all that, and after nearly forgetting very important things, I think we have covered everything. So thank you for listening. And please make sure that if you want to follow us, you can do so on Twitter/X at TT Radio Official and LinkedIn at Teachers Talk Radio. Just a reminder that email address is info@teacherstalkradio.org, just to be very, very clear, because I want you to make sure that if you do want to host, that you are actually getting through to us. You can join a wonderful team of people. They are absolutely fantastic. You've got some prime examples here in front of you. And we will be back at 10 o'clock next Sunday. So thank you for tuning in, and we will see you soon.
Full of outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused